it will reduce the consumption by increasing the consumption, or
Yes.
increase consumption by decreasing the consumption? A little
Exactly,
bit lost.
exactly.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to the newest episode of our edutainment podcast. And this season, we're talking about IoT. And as much as we would love to be a self-taught geniuses and find everything ourselves, we definitely need help from a professional, from the expert who knows everything and who will be able to navigate us in the mysterious world of IoT. And that's why today we talk with Sophia, an expert in the domain, the CEO of Linked Things. Welcome, Sophia. Thank you for joining. Could you please tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself?
So thank you, Ksenia, for this opportunity to talk to you. I have seen your great podcast, and I'm delighted to be part of it today. Um, So, as you said, I am Sophia Hasnain, the CEO of Linked Things. Linked Things is an IoT and AI company operating out of Pakistan, out of all places. But I started my career as an electrical engineer. I started my career as an embedded systems designer. And when around 2014, 15, people were talking about IoT and M2M and all of that, it just intrigued me because I had, over the years, as it happens in your career, that, you do engineering, but you end up doing all the PowerPoint and Excel kind of work. And I was, quite far off from engineering. But 2015, I decided to look a bit deeper into it. And in early 2016, I established Link Things to explore IoT, especially from the emerging market perspective.
Perfect. But we're actually going to start right off what you mentioned, that even though it seems as an engaging idea, the emerging one, it still does not completely fit into the current agenda. What would be the main and the most obvious obstacles and challenges and difficulties which, let's say, a company within a particular country climate would be facing if they would start talking about IoT and thinking, oh, maybe that's a good idea, something we would need to be interested in.
So I think the thing is that it is pretty multidisciplinary area in on its own. So it's not just that I plug this thing with the cloud and it happens. Because if I have to get the full benefit out of it, I have to connect each and every point in the value chain or in my process or in my environment or whatever the case may be. And I have to plug everything in and get the data of each and every point onto the cloud platform. And once I get it on any cloud platform, then I also have to worry about how to present it. So like the dashboard aspect of it, and then the analytics and AI. So that everything requires data to be collected in a certain way so that it is usable and useful for the customers or for the end user.
Sorry, I was just interested, like you were mentioning that there's so many fields which are interconnected at this point, and they're all dependent, and it's important to take a track of all of them to be able to actually provide the solution. Is there one which has no relation to that on any level? Like, is there something that you would definitely not be using? Because you mentioned that it's a lot of engineering, a lot of networking, a lot of marketing, a lot of some design and additional kind of like architectural propositions happening. Is there something that definitely would not be used?
There is little bit of everything that is required because it's a multidisciplinary. So you cannot say that I would skip this. And I think a
Mm.
lot of people, a lot of people come from the telco side and thought that the network would be the key thing or the major component of it. Yes, network is, but it's not that you can't do IoT without a certain kind of network. A lot of people talk about 5G revolutionizing everything. I think it's every bit to get coming together and solving the customer problem that is going to revolutionize it. And since we
Mhm.
just a thought that we talk about like industrial revolution 4.0, And unfortunately, none of the big players are taking it as a revolution. So everybody is still clinging on to their asset and saying, if I am vendor A, I'm Siemens, or I am, Ellen Bradley, or I am Honeywell, or whatever. I have the strongest play, and the network people come in and they say, I'm Vodafone and I have the biggest play and biggest power, or I'm AT&T and I can, do this. And then Amazon or AWS comes in and says that, we are the cloud pioneers and we will do it. But I don't think so that it is like this, because if we have to really think of it as industrial revolution 4.0, then we have to look at what are the things that are actually stopping us from progressing, and how we can actually make it a true revolution. Like, what are the things that we will have to really let go and develop an ecosystem so that end customers actually benefits from all of this. That's the idea, right? It's not that I go out and say that, I am the greatest, but the idea is that I can and solve the end customer problem. That is the key, I think, that everybody misses out in this whole hype.
Yeah, I can understand that because during these studies and during some work, I met with the concept which is ORAN, which is wonderful in theory, open network, feasible for everyone, adjustable to all the providers. But when you come to practicality of it, you need to share the source code, you need to share the architectural approach, and providers are not really willing to share something that is patented, which is their intellectual property. And it seems like on paper it sounds good, but in practicality, nobody wants to share that. And it sounds a bit similar to what you're explaining right now. Like there's a lot of contributions which must be made to actually implement IoT in its beauty, in its core. But people who are involved into that and representatives from different services and different industries, they feel that others should share more prior to us sharing more and then making it all perfect. Like it's not us who's stopping that from the progress, it's others who's not participating in that. No.
Yeah, and I think it's not the technical issue. I think it's more the
Mm,
business issue, like how we solve this problem, because it's not technical. Like, if you say how to share the data or how to share the information between two systems. I mean, people have been doing it for the last 20 years using APIs, and APIs have suddenly become very famous and a tech word and buzzword again. But then APIs are something which is a very standard way of communicating, and you can actually do it. All you have to do is figure out how you will solve this as a business problem. Like, if I have to communicate, or the information has to handshake with another, from one system to the other and then pass on to the next one, what is the economic value of it and how to price it? I think, since we haven't been focusing much on that side, as everyone in the industry, and as a small player, we also feel that this is the whole thing that is missing, right? So, like, everywhere you have this kind of it's a wall, either a barrier or a walled garden for you, and then you just cannot seem to
right.
cross it. That, I think, is actually stopping the whole IoT growth, and also,
It's actually
adoption.
interesting that you mentioned API because this is something that is so obvious for many tech companies to use, even as an intermediate solutions. Like before they develop something more complex or something more licensed, where they need more contracts and more royalty payments, they would prefer to stay to something like which is easy to make overnight. So the question for me as the user who doesn't really know anything, like IoT API, just random letters everywhere, why should I care about IoT? Why should I be interested in including that into my life? Why should I be buying that as a part of a service? And what is in this for me as the user who is far away from the tech world and who doesn't really know the difference much in between those things?
I think it's a very good question. And why is customer, like, besides all the technical discussion, why would a customer be interested in IoT? And I think that is because, as a business, my margins are going very thin at the moment, right? I mean, in the last 6 7 months, we have seen that energy costs have skyrocketed. But even before that, like, generally, as the consumption is rising, I mean, the whole point of innovation is that you increase the consumption bring more and more to
What are
out
you
in the
saying?
hands of
Don't
the
say that.
customers, and then they use it, right?
Oh.
That's how this whole thing works, right? So now my margins are getting thinner and thinner and thinner. I have to compete. Like, and with the whole globalization as well, I, as a business in Pakistan or Africa, I cannot isolate myself from what's happening in the US or Europe, and I have to like compete with my competition is not just not my someone sitting next to me, but it is a global competition, and I have to worry about my manufacturing costs, I have to worry about my supply chain costs, I have to worry about my HR costs, I have to worry about my marketing costs. I mean, on everything you're trying to save this, and that savings come from bringing efficiency in your processes, right? And how do you bring efficiency? Now you have brought the automation, which has been on for the last 40, 50 years. Everything is a lot more automated. Some things are hybrid, automated, and manual. But then there is that element which is completely missing, which is going to bring your efficiency to the next level, and that is the information. Like, where are
Mhm.
my losses? We cannot assume and average out the losses anymore. We can't say that my energy cost is X dollars where it is 2X, right? Or it is 1.5X. I cannot do this kind of cost calculations. And as a business, if I have to drive efficiencies, I have to control my cost. I have to know where are the inefficiencies in my process. Why is my production line not working for all 24 hours? How can I actually squeeze everything that needs to be done in 26 hours or 25 hours in 24 hours and optimize this? Like efficiency, driving efficiency, reducing your costs. Second, bringing predictability. And I think the third most important, which is going to actually emerge in few years more, is that your experienced workforce is retiring, but a new graduate that is coming in is not used to of using things on paper. They prefer to use their handsets, right? This is the universe for your generation, for the new generation that is going to come to the workforce, and we do not have systems for these people to understand what's happening, right? So that's why we also think that the new technology coming in is going to create a lot more immersive experience for the new workforce that is going to come. And then they can be a lot more productive, because you can't have the same thing running on for hundreds of years. We have seen already the fourth revolution that people are talking about on the industrial side.
You actually mentioned 2 points. One I would like to discuss a bit more. Another one I don't quite agree with. And I'll start with the second one because it's more fun that way. Don't you think that maybe that is partially, shooting yourself in the foot? Because when you're expecting IoT to, when you're relying on various sensors across your industry, which would just collect information and alert you when something goes wrong, and you would just be waiting for this alert, and you say, well, there was no alert, so everything must be fine. Whereas people who has been working with the particular requirements in particular equipment in set up area, they know different patterns. Let's say if the machine makes this kind of sound, it will break in 3 days or something like that. They have more practical experience driven by not analytics, but basically like not machine gathered analytics, but themselves gathered analytics. And wouldn't that be, relying too much on this kind of devices be harmful in the way that different things cannot be patternalized, if that's the word, cannot be, analyzed in such a manner that it would eliminate, the human analytics and analysis aspect on premises, not behind the counter or behind the desk.
Once again, a very good question. I think, see, those people who are using all these, their own senses or human intelligence have learned it, okay, in a hard way as well.
Hmm.
So they may have introduced a few losses. They may have, made a few mistakes, which may have costed the businesses something, right? which is something that we are ignoring at the moment. So there is the cost of all that learning and of all that experience that's built in somebody who has worked for 40 years, right? Now I am bringing in a new person, and he is going to obviously, or he or she is going to replace that person who has been around for 40 years. I can go through the same learning experience and incur the same costs, or I can learn from those and build it into the system. And I'm not saying that the new workforce would wait till the 11th hour for the buzzer to go on, but they will have access to the information that can actually, that's not more mechanical, but it's more data and analytics, and in the, in the form that is more usable for this new generation that is coming to workforce, so that they can make also decisions in 3 days. They will also know that this is going to, not be workable after 3 days, and I have to find a solution. So I'm not saying that, the new generation is going to wait till the 11th hour when the breakdown happens and then they will do something. But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that they will, you can actually reduce the cost of learning and cost of that experience.
Okay. From that, I would like to, like, as a side note, throw another buzzword and see if I understand that correctly. So basically, I read such a concept which is called the Internet of Humans. So would that particular case that you're describing be more like IOH, when people will be interconnected and sharing different observations, different analytics, different experiences, or that's something different than the classical understanding?
I think so. IOH has kind of
Hmm.
happened, right? So, like, you and I got connected, and we are sharing our experience and all that, and with, I think, with Facebook, social media, that has already happened, and we all are so used to of making new friends on social media, which was quite not, thinkable a few years ago. Like, you would say, why would I share this with someone whom I have never met? But, like, you get into this, you get to know their ideas, you see that, okay, yeah, there is similarity of the ideas, and I would like to maybe go out for coffee with those guys, and maybe, this would just happen in virtual world, that you have coffee and all that. That's not really happening.
I read a very ambitious phrase from Erickson, which I quite liked, specifically for how much it has in itself. Is that the perspectives of IoT seem to be limitless. How do you think? Is that a very accurate description? That there's seriously a limitless amount of use cases and further applications of IoT devices, or that's a little bit too bold?
I think so. We need to take all of these claims with a pinch of salt. Definitely,
Good.
IoT. I got into the whole IoT again, like your M2M or embedded, again after 15 years of doing all the other kind of work, because I was also influenced by this kind of hype that IoT can do wonders, and it can actually, it's a true revolution. So I think over the last 6 years, I truly believe that this is a revolution. This has the potential to revolutionize it. We have to realize now, I think, after maybe 8 years of hype or 10 years of hype, where we stand, what are the bottlenecks, and how we can actually truly make it limitless. It definitely has a potential, more potential, I think, than quick commerce or fintech, to change the world. How we all work, perform, and also has a lot more impact than maybe fintech or quick commerce or e-commerce kind of, or even blockchain, I would say, or NFT. So, of all the buzzwords that are going on, I
Yeah, we're
truly
basically
believe
collecting all of them within, like, a
all
one
of
minute
those.
frame.
So,
All of
all of
them.
those, all of those. But IoT is something that is going to actually, uh, that has an impact as well. So if we just look at, for example, energy use case, which is the biggest
Mhm.
theme, which is topic these days, and with winter coming in the Western Hemisphere, it is a real challenge how to actually keep people warm and keep the supplies running. That's where IoT can also help with the distribution, with optimization of the use, bringing efficiency, bringing, all this. So IoT has definitely has an impact on all of this. Again, same with water, with climate change. I live in Pakistan, where a third of the country is under floods, and all of this, I think, is I wouldn't say avoidable, but I would say that we can minimize the damage by utilizing the data effectively, and also using IoT. We have, I mean, my company has had installed some flood level monitoring units, weather stations, soil moisture units, and all that that can actually provide the information so that you can minimize the damage. I'm not saying you can actually cancel climate change with IoT, but what I'm saying is that you can actually reduce the damage, you can actually make the relief efforts more efficient with IoT. So there is that kind of impact that is possible with the whole thing.
Okay. This is actually interesting that we again circled back to the energy efficiency question because it is probably one of the very unique use cases when we're using this kind of devices, this kind of sensors. Yes, there are other approaches like ML and AI are also aimed onto collecting the data and providing some particular insights. But I think the IoT and specifically within the sensor based devices are the ones who can face and actually address this question of energy efficiency, the first ones. Do you think that something as small as, like as we previously addressed, like this kind of devices or something as small as smartwatch can already contribute into a question this big? Like how me as a user of a smartwatch can actually contribute in a question which is that big, that gigantic, and that worldwide? Is that actually impactable? Is that compatible? Or this is just something that I will solve for myself? Like I will be solely using the energy lesser, but others will be doing whatever they do still. Do those things like are in the same scale or they work on different levels?
No, I think you're helping the planet. I think since these
Yay!
floods
I love
happened,
planet.
I think I've been thinking about this as a, you must have also heard about this butterfly effect. So like, a butterfly
Yes.
in some part of the world can actually disturb the climate or the weather system in another part of the world. And I think that, this is the most important effect that must be taught to everyone these days, that we are responsible for our actions. We, as consumers, we have crossed a lot of the boundaries. And I'm not talking about IoT here, but I'm just saying that generally our consumption patterns are highly inefficient and irresponsible for this planet. So if we can actually save, maybe you save 10% of the energy, your energy consumption, and we're talking about billions of people who are doing it, I think we can make a difference. So we have
Okay.
to, this whole watching our carbon footprint, our energy consumption, also adopting practices that are sustainable. So that's all. Everything starts. I mean, why people are interested in doing industrial IoT? As I told you, innovation is because they want you to increase the consumption. And now I think we have to reverse this cycle and we have to say that, okay, this innovation is actually going to reduce my consumption and make the world more sustainable. And that's the way I want to go.
It will reduce the consumption by increasing the consumption or
Yes.
increase consumption by decreasing the consumption? A
Exactly,
little bit lost.
exactly. Exactly. So
Okay,
you
it's
will, I mean, I think that, I mean, we would be digressing again, but we also have to think that, with a lot of mining that we have to do for the batteries. So we are saying we are doing a lot of renewable and not going for fossil fuel, but we will be mining lithium and phosphate and iron more and more for the batteries. So yeah, we have to find a way to actually make the life sustainable. I mean, till I think we go to Mars, there is no other option. And
okay. So I'm gonna ask another provocative question. As long as we're talking in that key, do you think that it will be a helpful way and the good idea and the logical conclusion from what we have just discussed that we need to watch our carbon footprint and this has should or must each and every person on the planet be given the IoT device for this particular case of monitoring to make a bigger impact?
no, I think start with the people who have horrible consumption patterns. maybe people who are utilizing a lot of energy, who are not very sensitive compared to people who basically don't have it. I mean, I live in Pakistan. There are people who do not have electricity 12 hours a day. So I'm not saying that we give them light controls and and heating controls or air conditioning controls, because they anyways don't have that. I think where we'll have to find a solution for every segment which is going to bring efficiencies. So we may have a policy. We might need a policy on the energy side which is not just about increasing the supply or bringing the efficiencies on the supply side. We have to take care of that on the demand side. On the demand side, that is possible with IoT, that you actually create segments that there the waste is related um, to leaving heating on for longer time or leaving cooling on. But in the second segment, it may not be wastages, but it could just be that they don't know that they are utilizing inefficient appliances, and they are paying more for that. They are not benefiting from it, and they are actually a burden on the overall energy situation of any country.
Okay, this is actually interesting, and I would like to ask a bit more on that matter because for me, as I'm now living in a very different part of Europe than many years before, I'm facing a different issue of different climate, obviously, and also of different living conditions. And for me, for example, when I'm looking for an apartment, it mentions the energy efficiency level of the house. And in a lot of ways, depending on how old the building is, or like if you live in a historical city center or whatever, the energy efficiency level is pretty low. So that means that the house would either overheat in the summer or it will be very cold in the winter or vice versa. Do you think that whenever this kind of thing is happening, like we cannot just demolish the building and build a newer one with the proper standards? Do you think that introducing some kind of sensors, as you mentioned in the previous case, which would be indicating how to make this particular life place a more livable and more energy, like eco efficiency friendly, would that be a use case, or that's a little bit over the head?
Yeah, so I think that that whole limitless things, we'll probably have to break it down and say, okay, we will solve this problem this way and that way and that way, but we continue on the path. I think that's very important, to continue on the path and not reject any technology or digital solution for the evil that we talked about, but
Right.
rather just follow the path to progress. That's important.
Okay. Yeah, so it's basically would be like not exactly limitless, but it would be milestone based. We would go
Milestone based.
from one way to another one. I'm
Absolutely.
actually partially glad that you mentioned the evil side of that because that brings us very logically to the next activity. So, as you know, usually on the show we play a little game about different use cases and how to actually approach them. So, what we're going to do today, usually we do that within 1 minute ish kind of time frame, and I will be giving you the myths and the bad things that I read about IoT all over the world and all over the net, which are saying like what exactly it is and how it can be used. And I would like you to basically debunk those myths if they're wrong or if they're right, like just to actually address what is happening.
I'm in.
How does that sound?
I'm in.
Okay, perfect. We can start around now. Okay, so IoT is just about sensors. It's all
No,
just sensors.
IoT is all about data, and sensors is one component.
Okay. All IoT devices must work together.
They
All
must
of them.
work in sync, not together, but
Okay.
in sync.
Okay. Internet of Things cannot be made secure.
Okay, so security is a challenge. I think
Okay.
everywhere in payments, I wouldn't say anything is security, is foolproof security for anything and everything. No, you can also
Hmm.
hack a Tesla. You can also hack, a payment service provider. Visa has been hacked. So all of these things have happened, and you cannot say that a government get hacked and all that. So I'm not saying that this is something that is security is not doesn't have a security risk. What I'm saying is that since you have a lot of different players and a lot of information handshake happens, you have the
Mhm.
possibility to monitor security piecewise and and then develop solutions accordingly.
Okay, good, fair enough. And the last one would be IoT devices must have wireless connectivity only. It's again to
Ideally,
the like
yes.
networking question. Oh, okay.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
ideally, yes, so that you actually make it a lot more flexible. I My biggest beef with all these BMS, so building management systems that have old legacy networks, is that you spend 50% or more of your cost on cabling. Why? I mean, you can achieve the thing with
To
wireless, and you should just focus on wireless. I think I am not big fan of cabling because that's a waste of resources.
But what about those bad and harmful 5G waves which are going through your walls and into your house and into your brains and stealing everything? How about those? That you cannot get with the cabling. You'll be safe from that.
Exactly, but I think I mean, is that a myth question that
It's
these
it's more
these
like a
radiations are
conspiracy
harmful?
question.
I think I
I
don't know. I mean, yes, they could be harmful. Yeah, they may not be harmful, and I think a lot of people have different experiences. Maybe we need to investigate it properly.
okay, good. Okay, done. Yeah, turned out not every myth is a myth on the internet. We cannot. We need to check the data even more carefully. Okay, thank you. So I think this is like the main gist of what we need to approach when we're talking about IoT. There's a lot of more questions I would like to ask about networking, being the telecommunication engineer now myself, but probably that's a little bit out of the scope. Just to finalize the show, I'll ask you to actually say one myth which you had yourself when you started working with IoT, which turned out to be completely wrong. Although when you entered the field, you thought that this is exactly correct, this is true. So, have you had your own personal myth which had to face a harsh reality of being not correct?
I think the myth that I truly believed in was the adoption would be quicker, like customers would adopt IoT fairly quickly. It makes a lot of sense, and they should just like say, "Oh yeah, Sophia is selling this solution, and we will buy this." So that was I think the myth that got trashed, and it's a very long journey. And I think that market readiness plays a lot of role. Technology readiness plays a lot of role. Country's economic condition plays a lot of role. So we have, the and also like the journeys. So like I don't think so that adoption happens now. I wouldn't say that technology adoption happens like this, but it happens. People try it, absorb it, and then accept it. So that cycle may take longer. So my that was the myth that I think I sadly believed in and had to unbelieve.
So it's not necessarily technology is not ready for that. It's more like end users are not ready for that in some
Exactly. So
cases.
I think, yeah, so technology, and again, technology is just one part of the whole solution. You have to look at the market dynamics, you have to look at the customer profiles, you have to look at their ability to pay, the economic conditions, and all that. So, like, we are now entering global recession as well, and what people would be preferring, what they would not be preferring, where they would be spending, where they would not be spending, and all of that actually has an impact on your business. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I think that would be all for today. Thank you again so much for providing the inside view from as basically the industry player. All the hidden things and all the problems. It's an interesting and basically very day. On the nose discussion about the daily problems we're facing right now, especially with the energy situation happening right now. So, thank you again so much for being here today for
Thank you.
discussing
I
that and for
thoroughly enjoyed.
sharing.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed. I rarely get to speak to, on a very intelligent podcast. So I'm glad that I would be on your podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.